Hi, Reddit. I'm Olivia, 26, and I recently got a call from my parents after years of no contact. Not because they miss me, not because they regretted how they treated me, but because my brother, my parents' golden child, had been arrested and now they wanted my help. The same parents who cut me off the second I left for college. But here's the thing. I don't owe them a damn thing. Growing up, I always knew I was second place. My brother, Zach, was the center of my parents' universe. He had ADHD and struggled in school, so my parents spent every waking moment catering to him. Every meltdown, every outburst, every problem. My responsibility. I was expected to be understanding. I was expected to be patient. I was expected to sacrifice everything to make his life easier. And if I ever dared to speak up, I was being selfish. When I was 8, Zach, 10 at the time, destroyed my favorite toy in a fit of rage. I ran to my parents, crying. Mom barely looked up. Olivia, he didn't mean it. You know how he gets. I sniffled, but it was my... Don't be difficult, Dad cut in. And that was that. Zach never got punished. I never got an apology. Just another lesson in how much less I mattered. By the time I was a teenager, I stopped trying, stopped asking for their attention, stopped hoping for fairness. I focused on school, worked part-time jobs, and saved every penny I could, because deep down I knew if I wanted a future, I'd have to build it alone. And I was right. The moment I got accepted into college, my parents sat me down. Not to congratulate me, not to ask how I felt, but to tell me the plan. Mom smiled, holding my hands. Sweetheart, we're so proud of you. Dad nodded, but we were thinking maybe you should stay home for college. I frowned. What? Mom sighed like she had already decided. It would just be so much easier if you commuted. That way, you can still be around to help with Zach. There it was. They never expected me to leave, because in their eyes, I wasn't my own person. I was Zach's caretaker. I shook my head. No. Mom blinked. What? I said no. I repeated, voice steady. I'm going to college. I'm moving out. I'm not giving up my future for Zach. Dad scoffed. Olivia, don't be dramatic. No, my voice was firm. You never cared about what I wanted. You only cared about how I could make your lives easier. Well, I'm done. Mom's face twisted. So you're just going to abandon your family? I let out a bitter laugh. No, Mom. You abandoned me first. Then I stood up and walked out. I didn't look back. I packed my things, moved into my dorm, and never returned home. My parents, they cut me off immediately. No calls, no texts, not even a damn birthday message. It was like I had never existed. And honestly, it hurt. But I built my own life. I graduated, got a great job, and for the first time, I was finally free. Until 5 years later they called. And I knew they wanted something. It was Mom's number. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Then curiosity won. I picked up. Silence. Then Mom's voice shaky. Olivia. I leaned back. Wow. Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. She exhaled sharply. Please. We need your help. I raised an eyebrow. Help. Dad's voice cut in, angry and desperate. It's Zach. He's in jail. I almost laughed. Because of course. The golden child messed up, and now, suddenly I existed again. How tragic, I said flatly. Mom sniffled. We need money for his bail. He made a mistake, but we can fix this if... I interrupted. Let me get this straight. They went silent. You cut me off the second I stopped being useful. You ignored me for years. But now that Zach's in trouble, you suddenly remember I exist? Mom stammered. Sweetheart, we were just... No, I snapped. You didn't care about me then, and I don't care about you now. I could hear her breath hitch. Dad, furious now, barked, "We're still your parents, Olivia." I smiled. Cold, sharp. "No, you're just two strangers asking me for money." Then I hung up, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not guilt, not regret, just relief. Because I was finally free. After I hung up, I expected them to get the message, but I should have known better. Because my parents, they weren't the type to accept consequences. And over the next few days, they made that very clear. First, it started with texts. "Mom, Olivia, please. We're desperate. Mom, we know we made mistakes, but this is family. Zach is your brother. Dad, don't be heartless. You have a good job. You can afford to help." I read them, then deleted them, because as far as I was concerned, I wasn't their family anymore. Then the calls started, blocked, then emails, straight to spam. Then, out of nowhere, Lily texted me. "Lily, hey, can we talk?" I blinked, because Lily, my cousin, hadn't spoken to me in years. And if she was reaching out now, that meant my parents were getting desperate. I sighed and called her. She picked up immediately. "Olivia," she said, voice hesitant. I leaned back. "Let me guess. My parents put you up to this." Silence. Then, quietly, "Yeah." I exhaled. "What did they tell you?" Lily hesitated. "That Zach got caught up in some bad stuff. That he's in jail. And they need money to get him out." I smirked. And she trailed off. I waited. Then she sighed. "They said you refused to help because you never forgave them for the past." I scoffed. "Of course they did. Because of course they painted me as the villain. That was always their way." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, genuinely curious, "Is it true?" I sighed. "Yeah, it's true." She hesitated. "Why?" And just like that, everything came pouring out. I told her everything. How my parents never saw me as anything but Zach's caretaker. How they dismissed me, ignored me, treated me like I was nothing unless I was making their lives easier. How they cut me off the second I left for college, like I never even mattered. And now that Zach had finally screwed up his life, they wanted me back. Not because they cared, but because they needed something from me. When I finished, Lily was silent. Then she let out a long breath. "Jesus." I chuckled bitterly. "Yeah." Another pause. Then she muttered, "They made it sound like you were just being petty, like you were holding a grudge for no reason." I smirked. "Sounds about right." She was quiet. Then, softly, "I'm sorry, Olivia. I didn't know it was that bad." I swallowed, because honestly, I didn't expect that. Lily sighed. "Okay, I won't push. If you don't want to help them, you don't have to." I blinked. "Wait, you're not going to try to guilt trip me?" She scoffed. "No. I mean, don't get me wrong. Zach's my cousin too. But if my parents did this to me, I wouldn't help them either." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Thanks, Lily." "No problem," she said. "But just a heads up." I tensed. "What?" She sighed. "They're not done." And she was right, because the next day, my parents showed up at my workplace. I was at my desk when the receptionist peeked her head in. Olivia," she said, looking uncomfortable. "There's a couple here asking for you." I frowned. "Who?" She hesitated. "Says they're your parents." I froze. Because no, they wouldn't actually. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked to the front lobby. And there they were. Mom, Dad, looking smug as hell. I clenched my jaw. "What the hell are you doing here?" Mom put on her best fake smile. "Olivia, sweetheart, you've been ignoring us." Dad nodded, crossing his arms. Figured this was the only way to get your attention. I scoffed. Oh, you have my attention. Now leave. Mom sighed. Honey, can't we just... No, I snapped. You don't get to just show up here and act like we're fine. I glanced around. My co-workers were watching. Mom saw it too, and she smirked, like she wanted to make a scene, like she thought she had the upper hand. I clenched my fists. They weren't leaving until I gave them what they wanted, and that wasn't happening. I exhaled sharply. Then, loud enough for everyone to hear, I said, "You really want to do this here?" Mom blinked. I leaned in. "You want to play the perfect parents act in front of my coworkers?" I scoffed. Because I can tell everyone exactly what kind of parents you really were. Her smile dropped. Dad scowled. "Olivia?" No, my voice was calm but sharp. "You think showing up here is going to make me cave? You think I'll give you money just to avoid embarrassment?" I smirked. "Try again." Mom flushed red. Dad gritted his teeth. And I just stood there. Because for the first time in my life, they had no control over me, and they hated it. Finally, Mom snapped. "Fine," she hissed. "Be selfish." We tried. I smirked. "No, you didn't. You just demanded." She opened her mouth, closed it, then grabbed Dad's arm and stormed out. As soon as they were gone, my co-worker, Jason, walked up. "So, that was intense." I sighed. "Yeah." He hesitated. "You okay?" I thought about it. Then I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Because for the first time, I finally realized I owed them nothing. And that felt really damn good. After my parents stormed out of my workplace, I thought that was the end of it. I thought I had finally shut them down for good. But I should have known better. Because a few days later, they pulled their most desperate stunt yet. And this time, it completely blew up in their faces. It started with an email from a lawyer. The subject line, "Urgent legal matter. Family financial support." I almost deleted it on sight. But then curiosity won. I opened it. And when I read the first few lines, I burst out laughing. They were trying to sue me for filial responsibility. For those who don't know, some states have laws that say children must financially support their parents if they're struggling. Most of the time, they're never enforced. But my parents, they were so entitled they thought they could force me to pay for their mess. And that was their biggest mistake. I called the lawyer, just for fun. "Olivia, last name," I said when he picked up. "You emailed me about my parents." A pause. Then a cold, formal voice. "Yes, your parents, James and Linda last name, have filed a petition under filial responsibility statutes. They claim financial hardship and are seeking assistance." I smirked. "Let me guess. They told you I abandoned them?" Silence. Then he cleared his throat. "They stated there was a family dispute, but they require support now that their son is." I cut him off. "Let me make this easy for you. I live in a state that doesn't enforce filial responsibility laws. Even if they did, they cut me off at 18. I owe them nothing." Another awkward pause. Then, in a defeated voice, the lawyer muttered, "I see." I grinned. "Tell them," I said, voice cold, "that if they contact me again, I'll be the one taking legal action." Then I hung up, and for the first time, I felt completely free. I thought that was the last I'd hear from them. I was wrong, because the next day, I got a text from Zach. I stared at the screen, because out of everyone, I expected him to be the last person to reach out. But there it was. "Zach, hey, can we talk?" I hesitated. Then curiosity won. I called him. He picked up instantly. "Olivia," he breathed out. "Thank God." I frowned. "What do you want, Zach?" He sighed. I didn't know they were going to do all this." I scoffed. "Didn't you, though?" Silence. Then, quietly, they told me you refused to help because you hated me. I exhaled sharply, because for a moment I actually felt bad. Then I remembered. Zach never had to lift a finger in his life. I was the one who always had to sacrifice. And when I left, he never once reached out. I sighed. Zach, let me ask you something. Okay, if our parents had never called me, would you have? Silence. Then, after a long pause, he muttered, No. I swallowed, because even though I already knew the answer, hearing it still stung. I nodded to myself. All right, that's all I needed to hear. Zach panicked. Olivia, wait. No. I cut in. I'm done. With all of you. He inhaled sharply. But we're family. No. Zach, I said, voice firm. I was never part of this family. I was just a babysitter you outgrew. More silence. Then, finally, broken, defeated. I'm sorry. I sighed, but I didn't say it back. Because honestly, I wasn't sure I forgave him. I hung up, and this time, I knew it was for good, because I finally realized I never needed their approval. I never needed their love, and I sure as hell didn't need their manipulation. Months passed. I focused on my own life, built my career, strengthened my real relationships, and my parents, they faded into the background. I heard rumors that Zach struggled in court, that my parents had to sell their house to cover expenses. But did I reach out? No, because I didn't care. Not anymore. Then, one day, I got one last email. From Mom. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, finally, I opened it. It was short. Only one sentence. I hope you can forgive us one day. I read it. Then, without hesitation, I hit delete, because I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I didn't need one. I was finally free, and that was all the closure I ever needed. Months passed. My life was peaceful for the first time in years. No calls, no texts, nothing from my parents, nothing from Zach. It was like they had finally given up, and I was fine with that, until one day. I got a call from an unknown number. I debated ignoring it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Hello. I answered. A hesitant voice spoke. Is this Olivia, last name? I frowned. Who's asking? This is Officer Martinez from Town Police Department. My heart stopped. We need to discuss your parents. I sat up. What about them? There was a pause. Then, carefully, they've been arrested. I blinked. Excuse me? He sighed. I understand this might come as a shock. I laughed. Because of course. After everything, this was how it ended. What did they do? I asked. The officer hesitated. Then, slowly, they were caught committing financial fraud. I froze. What? He cleared his throat. We can't disclose full details, but your parents were involved in an illegal financial scheme. They took out loans under false pretenses, engaged in tax evasion, and I put him on speaker and pulled up my email. There, in my spam folder, was an article. Local couple arrested for financial fraud. Scammed thousands from community. I clicked it, and the first thing I saw, my parents' mugshots. I burst out laughing, because this was karma in its purest form. They spent years manipulating, lying, and scheming, and now they had finally destroyed themselves. The officer cleared his throat. We contacted you because they listed you as their emergency contact. I rolled my eyes. Of course they did. He hesitated. We need to know if you're willing to help with their legal defense. I grinned. This was it. My final chance to shut them down forever. I inhaled sharply. Then, calmly, no, silence. Then, cautiously, so you're refusing to assist? That's right, I said. I have nothing to do with them. They made their choices. Now, they can face the consequences. He sighed. Understood. We just needed confirmation. I smirked. Oh, you got it. And then I hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at their mugshots. And for the first time, I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just freedom. Because now, they couldn't hurt me anymore. That night, I got one last email from Zach. I almost deleted it without reading. But then, curiosity won. It was short, only a few sentences. I know you won't answer, but I needed to say this. I should have stood up for you. I should have seen the way they treated you. I let them control me for too long. But now I know. They never cared about me either. They only cared about what I could do for them. And now they're alone, just like they deserve. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you know I was never your enemy. I was just too weak to be your ally. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the email, because at the end of the day, it didn't matter anymore. A week later, I got another update. My parents were denied bail. Their trial was set for next month. And me? I was completely done. I blocked their numbers, deleted every old message, and finally let go, because I had spent my whole life trying to prove my worth to them. But now, I realize I was never the problem. They were. And without them, I was happier than ever.